Welcome to the B2B CMO podcast, a show for marketing executives who are redefining what it means to be a strategic leader. I'm Jon Miller.
And I'm Sydney Sloan. Between us, we've led marketing orgs at companies like Marketo, which Jon founded, Demandbase, G2, and SalesLoft. For more marketing leadership resources, you can visit b2bcmoproject.com. And now, let's get into the show.
Hello to today's episode of the B2B CMO Project podcast. I'm Jon Miller, and my guest today started his career actually as a research analyst, and he fell into tech almost by accident during the internet boom. And then he spent nearly 20 years at IBM, working his way up from analyst all the way to chief marketing officer of IBM Americas. Today, he's the CMO of Johnson Controls, which is a 140-year-old company and a global leader in thermal management, mission-critical building systems, energy efficiency, and decarbonization. But what I really find interesting about him is that he never, I think, really left that role of analyst behind. He's vocal about how AI is rewiring the marketing operating model and on the idea that marketing should own market intelligence and use it to shape company strategy, not just run demand. So, Chris Bontempo, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Jon. Thanks for having me. Pleased to be here on the B2B CMO Project podcast.
So we always like to start just by getting to know our guests, a little bit as humans. So I guess to begin with, I like, what would be your origin story if this were a superhero movie, and what would be your CMO superpower?
Oh man, what a question! What a question to start off with. So my origin story is a CMO superhero. Well, I think first of all, let's all approach life with humility, and I don't think any of us are true superheroes, but let's play with this one a little bit. I think you nailed it in the intro. I kind of fell into marketing to begin with, so I was one of those people who didn't quite know what they wanted to do when they came out of college. So I messed around for a few years, had some adventures. And lucked into marketing at the height of the internet boom. And for all of the Gen Zers out there, you can look that up in Wikipedia and see what that actually was.
Before we get too much further, you studied European studies?
Yeah, I tend, I guess, to maybe my superpower is falling into things. Okay. I fell into a European studies major in undergrad because I looked at the core requirements at the end of my sophomore year and realized I had already fulfilled 90% of the requirements for a European studies major, and the only remaining one was to go abroad, which I was going to do anyway. So European studies it was, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise because what you learned was how to learn. Right? I took on economics, law, literature, language, history. And you could pick and choose whatever you wanted out of those, but you learned how to learn in each of those subjects. And it gave me a really broad range of things to talk about, things to learn about, and a way to look at the world that included all those disciplines. And so I think if I bring this into marketing a little bit, you mentioned it, right? You start with an analytical base, a fact base. And if you've got some analytical skills, you can, across all these disciplines, you can apply those analytical skills to all the different kind of fact bases you're getting, whether they're quantitative, whether they're qualitative, whether they're, more and more kind of aspirational fact bases on what we think the world is going to look like. You apply some analytical tools to them and see what conclusions you draw, and then take some actions. I would like to say, with the benefit of hindsight, that started with my undergrad education.
And then 18 years at IBM, kind of growing up through the ranks. Can you just tell us about how that shaped you?
Yeah. So before everybody pencils me in as always a big corporation person, because IBM is nothing if not big. I did get my startup stripes before that, and helped run a startup into the ground, as some of us had the privilege of doing in the aughts. And I like to think about that because those are the days where I learned a ton. taking risks in the startup world and figuring out, just doing every job possible to figure out, maybe how to move a business forward. We were a business ahead of its time in a market that never arrived. And so, those present some pretty particular challenges. We persevered, and then ultimately it didn't happen. I went to business school and then moved into IBM afterwards.
Okay.
IBM is an amazing place to get a marketing education. Every marketing job that you can imagine exists in some form or fashion at IBM. It's because the company, it's active in so many different markets. It has so many different customer types. They have hardware, they have software, they have services. They're a global entity that has local execution. And it's a tech company at its heart. It is a tech company full of forward thinkers who like to engage in the world with other forward thinkers and make progress. And I think for somebody like me who is really curious about a lot of different things but needed to find their way as a marketer, it was a great place to start. And where did I start? I started as an analyst because that's what I was good at. I knew how to analyze companies and markets and take them apart a little bit, figure out what made them tick. And then what I learned was strategy. IBM is a strategy behemoth. Right? They really do know how to do business strategy. IBM's been around for more than 100 years through multiple technology transformations. And what you learn working with people who've been through at least one or two of those transformations is how to pivot, companies, resources to growth areas and figure it out. And as an analyst, I learned that. And then when I moved into more execution roles, you are feet on the street figuring out how to pivot a whole, billion-dollar businesses in short time frames to help grow that company.
Well, that's fascinating, and it probably is partly then what the appeal of Johnson Controls was as a 140-year-old company.
Yeah. I like to joke that I somehow went from a 110-year-old company to an even older company with Johnson Controls. But I think with these, we're talking about some of the big brands in American business over the last 100 plus years, and I think the unifying factor between the two was that they were full of great people who like to think about things and come up with, ways to help customers address different needs, but really engaged, super intelligent, interesting people who just want to problem solve. And so when I moved from IBM to Johnson Controls, we're marketing different products and offerings, different services. It's still great people behind the scenes who are making it all happen. And so I think that was that made the transition somewhat easier for me.
Yeah. And just, finishing up getting to know you, a little bit of you outside of work. What are do you have passions, hobbies? What does your typical 5 to 9 look like?
Yeah. So, somehow having worked 19 years at IBM and then moved to a company it was based everywhere, but has a center of gravity in the Midwest. I've managed to stay in New York City for that entire time period. So I'm a New Yorker. I live here in the city with my family. We've somehow managed to raise 3 kids in Manhattan, which is really thanks to my wife, who does amazing work there.
Right.
5 to 9, for me to relax and enjoy life, it's family. I play guitar, which, whenever I really need a break, I break the guitar out. I even have a guitar in my office for, Friday afternoons.
Nice.
And then the other thing is I still somehow managed to drag myself onto the soccer field at least once or twice a week to play, somewhat competitive soccer. And what I love about that is when you get out onto the soccer field and on the teams that I play, nobody knows who you are. Right? There's no hierarchy. The only hierarchy is, can you score goals? Can you be a team contributor or not? Nobody cares what your job is. I don't think they even know what my job is. And it's just a good group of people. And I think that keeps me grounded. You can have a great soccer game or you can have a terrible soccer game, but at the end of the day, it's always good because you're out on the field playing soccer and it's just fun.
Winning and scoring as a team.
Yeah.
So awesome. All right. Well, so I want to pivot to something we always like to talk about on the podcast, as the B2B CMO project, is the changing role of the CMO. So what we talk about the importance of being a strategic CMO. What does that mean to you? To be a strategic CMO. What is something that you do as a strategic CMO that maybe tactical CMOs don't do?
So it's interesting. I think part of being a strategic CMO is having a strong perspective on the business and the market and ultimately the customer.
Yeah.
And so I think you can be executing tactics and you can be a great, tactical execution person and have a team that does that. But you have to bring the insight from all that execution into the strategic conversation that happens around the table with your C-suite peers. And I think I always said this, marketers are in a unique position because, John, we don't carry a quota. Right? So when you're out there talking to customers, and I at the heart of it believe that CMOs and marketers need to be out talking to customers in real life in these interactions, not just reading research or reports or even your CX survey feedback. Like you got to do all that. It's great, but you need to be out there getting the feedback directly from customers, talking to customers, representing your company. I operate my teams with 3 core principles. Number 1 is no daylight between sales and marketing, which is kind of table stakes for marketers at this point. Number 2 is be the voice of the customer back into the company. And the third is to be the energy supplier into the ecosystem of everybody around you. But that second principle of being the voice of the customer, I think that's what lets you get into that strategic conversation around the C-suite table. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be there, right? Or you won't be there for very long.
How do you operationalize that at a company as complex as Johnson Controls, right? You have so many different businesses and so many customers. You, Chris Bontempo, cannot be talking to all those customers all the time. So how do you actually make that work in an enterprise of your scale?
Yes. So the only way to do it is to inspire followership, set the example, and have your people ready to go out and do it. Train them, enable them, empower them, coach them. I'll give you another soccer analogy. It's like I coached my kids' soccer teams for a while. It's coaching kids soccer. You tell people how to do something, you show them how to do it, and then you have them go do it. And so it's not nothing here is the Bontempo show, right? So it's not just me. It's getting my whole team comfortable out doing it. Like everybody here has to buy into no daylight between sales and marketing and being the voice of the customer back into the company. I do remember when I was at IBM, we started this in our cybersecurity marketing team that I led for many years in the Americas. And there was a moment where I was at an event with my team and we had put up 2 subject matter experts to present and then take Q&A from probably 20 clients at a small session. And I won't say the city or the year or the time or the product, but I don't want to shame anybody, but that was a terrible event. It was just like nothing went well. The communication, our subject matter experts were so smart and so good, but they could not communicate the value. They couldn't communicate technically what was so important to them, what the customers needed to hear. And I remember huddling with my team afterwards and just being like, we could do better. We could do better at communicating the value of IBM cybersecurity our solutions, our products, and then we can bring in the subject matter experts and get them to communicate the technical aspects of what these customers want to hear. But in order to do that, we need to learn, we need to practice, and we need to get our reps live and put ourselves in these pressure situations in front of customers. And the team was like, "Oh, that's great, 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 love it." And then everybody looked around at each other, who's going to do that? And yeah, I was the leader. So it was my job. So I went and I did the next 5 of those things. I learned, and then we started teaching everybody on the team how to do it. And we built a team of people who could all go out and do that. And when that all comes together and you see your people with the confidence and belief to go do it, it's an amazing feeling. And I think that's what we're trying to build now at Johnson Controls too. I think all my teams, that's aspirationally what we want to happen. And you hit some, you miss some, but you're always trying to be on that upward trajectory to get better.
Anything else on, kind of something that you think is making an impact as a strategic CMO that maybe tactical CMOs aren't doing?
We hear the conversation a lot, John, about how people saying MQLs are dead.
I heard it.
You've heard it. Some of us are true believers in that. Some of us are, probably me, are kind of like, hey, they're dead-ish, but there's
dead-ish.
There's still some signs of life in there. I think to be a true partner, you have to have that business conversation, right? Or again, around that C-suite table with your peers. And the business conversation is not MQLs, right? The business conversation is ultimately, what we did as marketers with our sales and product management and services colleagues, when it came together, did it deliver a revenue outcome for the company that really matters? And in order to get there, you have to do all the marketing, blocking and tackling, from demand creation to capture to conversion and all the things and expansion, the things that we talk about as marketers. And in there, somewhere in that mix, are MQLs. The very tactical marketers who think only in terms of, can I get the number of leads in or the number of MQLs? Like, that's not the business conversation, right? So you have to be able to hang with your CFO in the conversation around secured revenue. What does that mean for profitability? And what does that mean for the business itself? And know what your contribution is there. So I think that CMOs need to have that financial acumen that maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was easier just to talk about lead volumes and MQLs. I think that's what's shifting. I still do have conversations about MQLs though. So I have to admit that.
Fair enough. So I want to pull that thread for just a second though, because, I think a lot of CMOs I've spoken to embrace this idea of no daylight with sales. It's a shared number. We're doing this together, which makes all the sense in the world. And yet then when you sit down with the CFO and the CFO says, well, how do I know why I should increase your budget versus the sales budget? Because it's all the same number to me, that CMO finds himself in a harder place to defend it than when it was like, well, because you'll lose the MQLs. Sounds like you're going into that. You have the no daylight, but you also are able to talk to the CFO about what marketing is doing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I don't know anybody who would say they've nailed attribution in this world. And if you've nailed attribution, please hit me up, because I'm interested. But I think there are steps along that quote unquote funnel or that customer journey that you have to be able to measure. And you have to be able to show things like a customer interaction came in, or we had a bunch of activity around an account that we can attribute to marketing, and then it turned into a lead, whether it was through direct conversion or through some other conversion mechanism that you're measuring. And then that yielded into a win ultimately. I'll be honest, here at Johnson Controls, we still track and measure marketing on direct contribution, direct conversion of a lead to an opportunity and the yield of that opportunity to a win. And, for us, it's pretty straightforward when we do that. And that can drive a good conversation with my CFO. At the same time, I need to be able to invest in the things that don't show measurable direct attribution.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But I think a lot of that to me comes down to confidence and belief. Like
Yeah.
I know what the right thing to do as a marketer is. And I think I'm lucky and I've got business partners on the other side in the presidents of each of our regions and my CFO who understand there is such a thing as a full funnel. There is such a thing as, top of funnel activities, that you have to invest in.
Yep.
I think for them, if we're not delivering an outcome at the end, then it's a much tougher conversation.
Sure. Pipeline is permission is the way I've heard it described.
Exactly.
If you're getting the pipeline, then you've earned the permission to also invest in the other things that work.
Yeah. And you build the trust that, hey, you actually know what you're doing. And,
Yeah.
what you're investing in these things for a reason.
Yep. The research we did with the project also showed that like one of the top trust building things CMOs can do are bring problems before anybody else surfaces them. I don't know if that resonates with what you've been doing.
Yeah, just a little bit. So let me talk about this. This is super interesting from a Johnson Controls perspective. And I think in any role you take on, you want to make sure you're always learning. And so the thing that I'm learning, and I have learned over the last year, and we're asking our Johnson Controls marketing team to be is problem solvers. Okay, I'm learning problem solving. Maybe you could say relearning it. But we have our new CEO came in last year, Joachim Wiedemanis, and he came in from Danaher. And if you know Danaher's the Danaher business system built on kind of the lean principles. And lean really should be not lean but learn. Okay, so we're learning. At the heart of lean is problem solving, and so we call it living the bowler life. So we have a set of metrics that we manage to, and we look I'm a scoreboard watcher, so I look every day, but like we look every month as a team by business unit and by region at our bowler, and we see how we're performing. And of course you want those cells to be green. And you need to, but there's always going to be red cells. So you need to chase the reds. And by chasing the reds, we mean if you've got a red cell 2 months in a row, you're going to go do a formal problem solving session with a problem solving tool where we use we get the right data. We slice and dice it a million ways. We do Paretos to find the concentration of the problem within that. And then we build an action plan and countermeasures against those problems. It is a very structured approach to problem solving. And my goal is for our team to be the best marketing problem solvers in our industry using these approaches. And you don't have many marketers talk about lean. It's not generally part of our lexicon, but it does work. And I have learned more in the last year on like how to be a good problem solver than I ever could have imagined. And it is taking hold within the team as part of our culture.
That feels like a pretty good segue to the next set of stuff I want to talk about, which is kind of learning in the age of AI and how CMOs are adapting to all this change in the AI first world. Where I want to start is, again, you went from a 110-year-old company to a 140-year-old company. What have you learned about bringing AI first change into enterprises like that and how to actually make it stick?
I would say we're still learning. We're still
Fair enough. Everybody's still learning. Yeah.
Still trying to make it stick. And I think no matter what company you're at, marketing is one of those functions where AI is, we're among the first to really be impacted by and embracing AI across our workflow. And and so the pace of change, I know it's a cliche, right? The pace of change is huge. But I think in marketing especially, the pace of change driven by AI is more than I'm seeing in other functions. I know others are impacted. Um, I think the challenge at Johnson Controls was it actually wasn't, there was no resistance really to AI tools. I think when you get into a 140-year-old industrial technology company, Johnson Controls, we there's a lot of old ways of doing things that the really smart people who you've got on the teams are always questioning why we do things like this and couldn't we do things in a better way? And they're waiting for permission to do things in a different way. And I think AI gives you that permission, right? It's this rising wave, an incredible amount of innovation that if you latch onto it and harness it, you can do those things that you've said for 10, 15 years. Why aren't we doing this differently? You need a certain kind of person who's a kind of a builder, a problem solver at heart to do that. I think these kind of engineering focused companies like Johnson Controls, IBM are like that. And so we had no real resistance to the application of AI. I think what we didn't know was really how, like which use cases to start with and where who could help us. There's a lot of snake oil sales people out there. And so, we had to just pick a few that were really important to us that there was some energy behind out in the market. So you knew there were going to be multiple solutions to them. And then you had to go just test things out and find a solution that would work for us. The other part of it is 140-year-old industrial tech company. You just look at our financials and companies like ours. We're not, let me just say this, we're not overstaffed. Okay. We're not over resourced for anything. And so, we're always looking for smarter, better, more efficient ways to do things with less because we don't have the luxury of, we're not a software company with 95% gross margins. Like that's just not our world. And so AI, when you say AI is going to be a force multiplier for you and you're sitting there, just trying to get your job done and you're overworked and you're trying to get a lot done and you don't have enough hours in the day, AI to you looks fantastic, right? And so I think for companies like ours, AI looks really good for a lot of stuff that will help people. And I don't have people who are worried about losing their jobs. They were worried about getting everything done, the demands of the job.
I think plus one to that, what I just love to understand is how do you then manage that so that you're giving people those powers without it becoming chaos? What are you actually doing around governance, budgeting, training, like making this actually work in a real organization?
Yeah, so one thing that these companies like Johnson Controls and IBM as well, and many others who've been around for a while, we usually don't lack in governance.
Okay.
So there's enough governance, and as soon as AI hit, one of the first things that all companies of this size did was establish an AI governance committee. Okay, so there's enough governance and guardrails around things, and I think more companies in that space had to loosen up the governance a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we started with like, hey, this could be we can always loosen it up, but it's really hard to put the genie back in the bottle, right? So that was first. I think the chaos comment is interesting. I think as leaders, as we're deploying and testing and then deploying new tech, you have to accept a little bit of chaos. I think that's where these companies like Johnson Controls, IBM, others maybe could be more accepting of a little bit of chaos in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that that was more of the culture shift that I had to help instill with my team here was, hey, it's going to be a little chaotic as we test out these different tools and we put some of them into some pilot workflows to see what would happen and whether we get the benefit of it. And by the way, if we're successful 100% of the time, then we're not taking enough chances. And I think people aren't used to hearing that.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I tell my team when we set goals for the quarter, generally speaking. So it makes a ton of sense. I've also seen companies, so you say you got your governance down, which is great, but I've also seen companies struggle with, now I have 30 marketers, each with their own prompts or their own context files, or their own, whatever. And it just, now I have 4 different tools that have context fragmenting in different places.
Yeah.
Again, nobody solved this, but are you doing anything to try to, again, tame that chaos?
We're trying to find the balance between the right level of experimentation within the tools that we've got, and then bringing in and then managing everybody across them. I think we're kind of for our use cases and pilots that we started 2 years ago when I first came in. I think we're at a more established place now where we have a common language. We've settled in on a couple of one tool for each use case or, a workflow that's where we've integrated things. And so you don't really have too much chaos there. I think it's when you're kicking off a new use case and you're trying to find the right tool or the right capability and put it into a process or a workflow, and you're taking those shots down the field and experimenting, that the chaos happens. And we just kind of accept it. But I think at some point, as soon as you have to scale beyond 1 or 2 teams, that's when you need to force the conversation across the teams and frankly, just make some calls on what we're going to do and, what we're not going to do. Like at some point, it's not okay to have 2 tools for something. And, you'll always have a few unhappy people who will say, well, I built this out on that other tool, but that's not the direction we're going. I think people are pretty accepting of that it just because they know they trust it's a cliche, but trust the process. They trust the process that we vetted everything and everybody's acting with best intent to get them the right, get the right outcome through the process using the right tech to get there.
It's interesting that, you mentioned tools as often as you are, right? I mean, you and I think first spoke about a year ago, because you kind of shared some of your frustration with legacy marketing platforms. How as you're experimenting and reshaping the model, like how do you sort of think about when it's time to kind of go find something new versus, no, let's kind of see what we can do with the tools that we have?
Well, John, I'm still frustrated with legacy platforms. That has not changed. It's a fair question. I mean, I think we have been much more open to new tools and platforms over the last couple of years, maybe than we historically have been. I think we've kind of settled in on a little bit of a process where we try to quickly figure out what we've got already in the platforms or tools that we have. And then I'm kind of getting away from bringing in new platforms and I'm more just bringing in different tools that we can use. And then there's an agentic framework now that we're using, with different, I'll say, different agent platforms that we can use to kind of string the workflow together. And for us, that's working right now. I think agentic, like the real rise of agentic and the ability to have true agents that do work for with you I think that's been a pretty significant game changer for us.
Yeah.
I think it's gotten us away from the tool and more into the work itself and how it needs to get done. And like the collaboration between the person and the agent to get something done, and then letting the agent kind of figure out how to, like, which tools to invoke and which, I'll get out over my technical skis here, but the agent's doing a lot of the work now to figure out what to bring in to get the thing to get the job done.
And that's something that that sounds pretty sophisticated, actually, in terms of putting some of that process and agentic workflow into place. Is that something that is working? I mean, it sounds like it's working, but like, what can you share?
It's early days. It is working with a couple of caveats. It's working when we dive into it and when we really start with a process that we want to figure out.
Yep.
And then start mapping out, like, you got to be a process engineer now, and you got to map out, who's going to do what to whom along that whole process, and whether it's an agent, what input needs, and much smarter people than I am on the team are working through this and figuring it out. I'm more, I think the team is terrified of the emails that I send when it's 11 o'clock at night and I've just been playing with something or seen something and then gone into an agent studio to try to recreate it, and like, hey, could we do something like this? Or, hey, this looks really cool, these people seem to be getting a good outcome, can we try this? And then I brought in a head of marketing AI engineering, and he's leading a team of really much smarter people than myself to kind of figure out how to build what we need. So we're early, but we've made a ton of progress.
Yep. I mean, it sounds like you have, and I think I will say I've definitely heard that bringing in kind of that lead of marketing AI has been a good move for a lot of other CMOs as well.
Yeah, John, the real magic happens when you get the marketer, field marketer, product marketer, content marketer together with kind of the marketing AI engineering lead or somebody on that team, with the people who are out every day talking to customers and working in the field. So our sellers and our service people. And when the beauty of being able to do this kind of rapid prototyping with, using agentic, but with the right people who know how to build it. If you get those people together and try storm some things, again, this is part of our lean, it's part of the Johnson Controls business system that we're building, where you bring all those people together to problem solve something, and using the AI and digital tech to help figure it out. Before, you wouldn't have been able to do that, right? Like, it wasn't part of how we thought about things, and it would have been so hard to do. And now with the tools and the process, it's a lot easier and gets you better outcomes when you bring in those people in the field.
Well, listen, we are nearing the end of our time, although this has been fascinating. We like to finish with letting folks share gratitude for mentors who helped you get to where you are, people who kind of helped you along the way. So any shout outs?
Yeah, a couple of shout outs. For me, mentors, there's some obvious ones. I was lucky enough to do a shift as the executive assistant to John Iwata, who was a legendary kind of CMO, CCO at IBM. And while I was a terrible executive assistant, I mean, absolutely one of the worst who ever lived, I learned a ton. I was lucky to learn from John. And one of the things I learned is you have to have this ability as an executive to just move from in 30-minute blocks and show up with a completely blank slate, no matter what happened in the previous meeting, and just jump in, help problem solve something, with a team, and then wipe the memory clean after 30 minutes and go into the next one and the next one and the next one. So John is definitely a big mentor for me. The other one I would mention in that group, and then I've got one other group of people, is Jonathan Adishek, who is now currently the CMO and head of communications at IBM. Jonathan really supported me actually as I was pursuing the Johnson Controls job. And I learned a lot from Jonathan, both at IBM and more afterwards, actually, as I now have a little more empathy for what Jonathan was going through as, with that seat at the table that I never quite understood until I got my seat at the table at Johnson Controls. But John, the people I've learned the most from are actually the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I'm not going to name everybody, but when you're out working through a problem with, at IBM parlance, you're band 8, band 9, band 10, relatively junior individual contributor, and they bring these perspectives that you don't have because you're old and you've been around for a while and you don't know the new ways of doing things. And now at Johnson Controls, we've got a whole fresh group of people for me to learn from. I think those people don't understand how much people like us learn from them in the everyday interactions that we have. And so, they don't realize they're doing reverse mentorship with us, but they are. And if we're smart enough to pay attention, we're going to learn a lot from them. So I just hope I am smart enough to be paying attention to them and learning and applying it to make things better.
Well, at the top of the podcast, you said that your superpower was maybe falling into things. But from what I've heard on the podcast, I actually think your superpower is that you're always learning, and from everything you're doing. And I think that's probably a perfect lesson for everybody, every strategic CMO to be taking away. So, Chris Bontempo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure being here.
Thanks for listening to the B2B CMO podcast. Head on over to b2bcmoproject.com for more episodes, plus the latest research and framework CMOs need, not just to survive, but actually thrive as AI and the new playbook reshape how we go to market. And if this episode sparks something for you, please follow the show, leave a rating, and share it with a marketing leader who could use a little inspiration. Special thanks to our wonderful partners, OneMind, 2X, Check, Demandbase, G2, Goldcast, LinkedIn, Fave, Sendoso, and Webflow for making this podcast possible. Until next time, be safe out there.